Oh man, you've got Dean Ashworth, who was acquired from Newcastle and had threatened to take Newcastle to arbitration, to take the legal route to get out of Newcastle. And then while he was on extended gardening leave, eventually the negotiations came together and Manchester United were able to poach Dean Ashworth to be their director of football at Manchester United. But now, just 5 months into his stint, he's gone. What the hell's going on at Manchester United?
No one knows.
Now, what's going on now at Manchester United?
Oh my man, that place is cursed. Because for me, as a director of football, what can you do in 5 months? You found it a mess. What can you do in 5 months? It's not like Maresca, where he's got all the players, they spent $1 billion for him, and yes, he has to be a good coach to manage at Chelsea. But even Pochettino was getting it right because they gave him enough resources. But you come in there and you find it a mess. And I mean, okay, fine, fair play. The Ten Hag experiment, if I could call it that at that point, because he wasn't the guy, but he won us the FA Cup, so let's keep him on and let's give him money to sign players. That didn't go well, right? But as far as I understand it, it wasn't just a Dean Ashworth decision to keep Ten Hag. It was him and other people involved. So then say, okay, we fired Ten Hag and now we're starting off with Ruben Amorim, and now we have to find a different style of play, and we're starting things from scratch again. I think it's not fair to fire a person after 5 months, number one. Number two, as ambitious as Daniel Radcliffe is. James? Daniel? Who's
Daniel
Harry
Radcliffe
Potter?
is Harry Potter, Chuck.
Who's Jim Radcliffe?
I know you'd love him to work some magic, but
magic.
he doesn't have that in his back pocket.
Imagine we had that disarming spell
So
against
Jim
every.
Radcliffe.
Thank you. Against every game, especially for set pieces, because we look horrendous. But I think, as ambitious as you are, you have to be patient. It's the same thing that we spoke about just earlier about Kaizer Chiefs. Which as much as you've got ambition, as much as you've got the talent, if you spent money, yes, you have put in your own money, you have to be patient. Things take time, especially with Man United, because I think if you've got a mini vehicle, you can do a U-turn as quickly as you want. But if you've got a big max truck, 18-wheeler, it's not going to be so quick. And you have to be patient in terms of how you're going to turn things around at a big club like Man United. So I think, yes, they did make mistakes in terms of keeping Ten Hag on as long as they did. Because after having won the FA Cup, the results were still there in terms of what he did in the league. The biggest or the best mark in terms of aggregating how good your team is, how good your management is. Over 38 games, your team is still open. You're still conceding goals. As much as we did win the FA Cup, we played Sheffield in the semi-final, 3 goals up, and we almost lost that. That should say to you that they won it, but they're looking shaky. And so, yes, they made a mistake and they kept him on for longer than he should. They gave him money to sign players. We've benefited from getting De Ligt. I think we've benefited from getting Mazraoui. Xerxes, I'm not too sure, right? But apart from that, I think Ruben Amorim has to have, even if we didn't sign players, Ruben Amorim comes in, he has a different style of play altogether. So he's probably going to make his own wholesale changes and sign his own players anyway, even if you got him in at the beginning of the season. So I think, I don't know what's going on at Man United. I don't think this is the right thing to do because we hunted Operada, we got Ashwood, we got someone else. We went to Bournemouth, to Brighton to get Brighton, Newcastle, and Man City to get the back staff right. And if he was headhunted and he was so prized and he was such a good person, if we fire him, who else is going to be better than Dan Ashworth? Who else are we going to find to replace him? So I don't know, man. We're very ambitious, but I don't think we have much direction.
So Jim Ratcliffe raised ticket prices at Manchester United because he needs to raise money for the project, right?
I must add that.
Yes. And so you think to yourself, okay, this man is frugal and he's trying to bring in as much money for the project as possible. But then when you look at his other moves, Dean Ashworth, as I mentioned, he was stuck at Newcastle, and eventually when they settled out of court, Manchester United paid £3 million to get Dean Ashworth. And then you kept on Erik Ten Hag and you gave him an extension, in fact. And when you had to part ways with him, because you always were going to part ways with Erik Ten Hag, regardless of the fact that he won that single match at the end of the season against Manchester City, you had to pay him. And then in order to go get Ruben Amorim, you had to pay Sporting to get him out of his contract and to bring him at Manchester United. And the fans are the ones who are paying for your knucklehead moves. So Ratcliffe came in like the Messiah. He came in like the savior, and now he's kind of looking fraudulent. You know, he's kind of looking like, what was that for? Because he was on the record, Chuck, saying how much he wants Ashworth. Like he pushed to get Ashworth, and then now 5 months down the line, he's gone. What is that about? So some reports suggested that Ashworth, he wanted out because with regards to hiring Amarim and other decisions that are being taken at Manchester United, Ashworth was frozen out, and so Ashworth did not feel as though he's part of the project or as he should be, and therefore Ashworth decided that this was not the place for him to be. I don't know for a fact if that's what was happening, but if that was happening, then there was communication from the team that we don't really value you in your position, and that's why they parted ways. But Chuck, I have to play devil's advocate, right? If indeed it was, say, the sole decision of Ashworth to keep Erik ten Hag, that's a fireable offense. Right there by itself, that is a fireable offense. And then if he is the one who is saying we need to give him a contract, and then the inevitable happens, and now you have to part ways with him and have to pay Erik ten Hag, that is a fireable offense, Chuck.
If you think about it though, Jay, okay, fine, in the league we're not good enough to compete. Even if we were as bad as we were, we're not good enough to compete because the bar was set very high. You have to get 90 plus, and that's where Arsenal only City can get to. Ten Hag has delivered a trophy in each season, and if you bank on that, what if he brings a Europa? Was that still a bad season? Like, do we not want a continued trajectory of winning stuff?
Wait, am I hearing you saying that Manchester United should have kept Erik ten Hag?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if it's a fireable offense, I'm just saying do you not see a bit of logic in his thinking?
Well,
is the question.
Well,
can you not play devil's
advocate? That is what he argued for, right, Chuck? So if that is what he argued for, that what you are saying, there's logic. This man has won us trophies. This man has delivered the FA Cup against our biggest rivals who have just been running riot in this country. So let us keep him on. He might bring us a Europa. If that was his argument, and then the season starts and it goes the way that it does, and Chuck, because we cannot revisit history, like what happened, right? The facts are Erik ten Hag then had the start to the season that he had, and as overwhelmingly the Manchester United fans were down with Erik ten Hag. Like, thank you for the trophies, but we don't want you in our club anymore. And if Ashworth is the one who pushed for that, and it went the way that it did, because sometimes, Chuck, you might see someone in our country, South Africa, we have a term that we call mooi van ver, which means like you look beautiful from afar off, but then when someone comes a little closer, you're like, you look a little funny under the light, you know. Just because you're harder than someone from across the street, and because maybe you've got cataracts in your eyes and you don't see properly, and now that they're up close, you see them exactly how they are, or you get to discover the personality, you have every right to say, nah, you know what? I'm not about this. Were they minding their business, going about their lives when you hollered at them? Yes, they were, right? And did you disturb them? Yes, you did. But now, Chuck, that they are here, you don't just go ahead and, well, let's continue with the ideas that I had just because like I thought what I thought when you were far. Chuck,
I think, right?
When let me just finish off this point, right? It was a mistake to extend Erik ten Hag because United literally paid for it dearly. And if Sir Jim is now and the other decision makers at Manchester United were thinking to themselves, well, this is a decision we were supposed to make, firing Erik ten Hag or parting ways with him at the end of the season, but we didn't, and this is what happened. We are not going to do this again where we are not convinced by someone's performance, but then we decide to give them a little more time because there is no time at Manchester United. So if in the 5 months they've seen everything they need to see with him doing his job up close and they've decided this is not the guy, they had to fire him.
Look, Jay, I think if I were to play, what's the double devil's advocate? Because you already played devil's advocate,
I don't know.
so we
You
can't
are
be
the
the
Red Devils
same
fan,
side.
so you know how like it works in that realm.
Anyway, the fact that when Erik ten Hag had, I think while he was en route to playing the FA Cup final, other alternatives were being interviewed. They were looking for someone else, and it seems to me, or it sounds like they couldn't find better alternatives than Ten Hag at present. And then he goes ahead and wins the FA Cup. We're like, well, because we couldn't find a chief candidate to back, and this guy just won the FA Cup, let's stick with him. So for me, at least there was an attempt, right? And if I don't know if Dean Ashworth is solely responsible for the hiring and firing of guys, because that's a big move. I think they run it past Ratcliffe, and obviously you'll lean on their experience and their knowledge. But I don't think it was completely foolish in terms of, oh, he wants the FA Cup, let's keep him. They did interview other guys, and I think Ruben Amorim was interviewed as part of the candidates, and they then said, Ruben, we need you now and never because things are a mess now, and they've gotten the guy. If you think about it, Jay, in 5 months, really, when Rashford and Casemiro went to the States to watch NBA, right? Gary never had an issue with that in terms of the team are in 13th place and you guys are going to watch NBA. Fine, you're not playing for international sides, but you guys should be home training and trying to better yourselves. Not the right thing to do, right? And so when you asked Ruben Amorim that question, Ruben Amorim said, Gucci, if it was up to me, I wouldn't have given them that time. But it's the culture. They know that according to the club rules, they haven't broken any laws. I wouldn't have done that, so the culture allowed them to. So in future, I would like things to change. So I think Dean Ashworth walked into a situation that is already broken. And of the things that he was able to fix, maybe Ten Hag was a big fixture in terms of get rid of that, get something different. But in terms of overall, the club was in a mess. The stadium was in a mess. So in terms of what he can and what he could not control, I don't think he would have done all of that thing and turned it around and fixed it in 5 months. You are going to get things wrong in 5 months. I think you want to get things right as well in that 5 months. I know it's a big thing, Ten Hag hiring and firing, but I think Jay couldn't have done everything by himself. There were things that were wrong, and so I think it's a mess to have fired him again. I think keep him. He's made a mistake. Keep him because you chased after him. He will make him. I don't like Naby, Jay. Like we're saying with Naby, you chased him for so long, and okay, at this point, it's not where you're not where you want to be. But keep him because he's the best in class. So I think firing him is a mistake.
I don't know the performance of Dean Ashworth except for the fact that he kept on Ten Hag and it happened what it happened. If his boss is of the opinion that, yeah, in the 5 months, this is not what, there's buyer's remorse. And the thing with Manchester United, it is a dumpster fire over there. So these are the things that happen, right? And I do think, Chuck, perhaps Ratcliffe was thinking heads must roll. He doesn't have anybody above him. If he had somebody above him, maybe he was the one who was going to get the boot, right? But since you cannot fire yourself, you do the next best thing. You go after the guy that you hired because the buck does end with you. Across the board, I don't think that management at Manchester United is doing a stellar job since Sir Jim came in. Like, I don't think we can look at the state of Manchester United and really think to ourselves, yeah, man, it's great. Oh, I see the improvements. There haven't been. He made hires and he's fired one of his hires already. So we'll see who they get in. And we'll also get to hear from Dean Ashworth, in terms of, hopefully we get to hear from him what happened, or we get to hear from Manchester United in terms of why it didn't work out. But if you as the boss have a sense that this thing is not working and I'm not willing to give it more time because I've seen enough, you pull the plug. Jay,
for me, I'm defending Dan Ashworth again. Manchester United, up until that point, had never had a director of football. This guy is the first iteration of that in the club's history. When other teams were doing that, they were like, we'll fine with our current structure. And now that they're in the mud, they're like, okay, let's get Kiki Berada. Let's get Dan Ashworth, because now they're behind. He's the first guy to do that, number one. The stadium has been refurbished inside the tunnel and whatnot. They're building a new training ground. So he's getting things running. So what would you expect him to be?
I don't think that was part of his job, Chuck.
I don't know, Chip, but I'm just saying there are things that are being changed. There are things that are happening at Man United, and you're thinking, this guy must be perfect. He's the first time. Which other model is he going to follow? Can you say, do it like such and such? Do it like such and such? No, it's the first time. And as Mourinho would tell you, and other managers who come before you, it's a hard job being there at Man United. I don't think it's just for the manager, but I think for the guys who are higher up as well.
Hey, ain't no excuse about it being hard. You took on the job. You huffed and you puffed to get out of Newcastle to go to Manchester United. And if at Manchester United you didn't do the job you're hired to do, I can see why you're out in the cold. But you make a fair point in terms of, and the point here, Chuck, is that Manchester United have been badly run for a long time. And maybe this is still a function of that continuing even under the dispensation of Ratcliffe. We'll see who he gets in, and again, we'll hopefully get to hear from both sides in terms of what happened, and we'll be back here to revisit how that all transpired.